I am the Wonky Prophet, and I've just finished this painting, which I'm calling Airdropped Jesus. Wait till the end to see the full revelation. Part 3 of what I am now calling Airdropped Jesus, which I thought was quite a humorous title for what I ended up with. So just off the back of the last video, I'm just sort of continuing almost the base of everything here. Everything's very bright and very saturated. Now you'll see later on that across this video the piece takes a real, almost sudden shift in tone as I start laying more layers over the top of the foundation. I had a lot of fun with it. I really just started leaning into this kind of yellow and blue contrast, which you'll see happening later on. But at this point I'm just sort of going in with slightly brighter values, a bit more saturation. I'm also following the directional light from the sunshine or the cross, and just building in a bit more colour. And you can see that I'm kind of just re-establishing some areas that I'd made a bit too shadowy, or just changing things a little bit, or just adjusting things. And then just starting to layer up the light. Now what I do as I'm painting, I'll do kind of, I get the full pass done on the entire painting, and then that allows me to kind of go back into sort of the sections of colour, like the yellow, the green, the sandy colour, the blues and the greens, etc. And I go in and I kind of lighten and deepen the contrast and lighten the values, put some extra darks in, and then once you do it once, it's about kind of matching that contrast on every other section of the painting. So I can go across it in almost like single passes, building kind of colour and contrast. And now you'll see later, it really, building that colour and contrast really starts to shift the tonal value of the painting, and almost the effect that I wanted to pull out of it. Now this is a rework piece of one. I was looking last night, I've actually painted this 5 times over now. There was some original sketches from years ago that I did in the field at a festival, and then I took those sketches and created a bit of a landscape, which I gave to the friend that I was working for at the festival, because he let me sit in his van when it was raining and paint. And he's a good dude, isn't he? You know who you are. And then, what was I saying? Lost my train of thought. Yeah, so I took that sketch, or that painting, took it home and kind of recomposited another painting from the 3 ideas that I'd built. And that became a kind of quick canvas painting sketch. And then I wanted to rework that by turning it into a kind of wide panorama. So I added a load of things onto the right of the scene and the composition, and that became Sun's Always Shining Somewhere, which you'll find on my Instagram. It's a panoramic piece, but it was only 16 by 32 inches. Now this one is, let me think, it's 34 inches height by 24, 48, 58, 60, 72 inches width. So it's considerably bigger. But I wanted to rework it and come back in with the idea of the light, and just to expand on the idea that I had in the initial Sun's Always Shining painting. And I just had this almost humorous idea about the kind of holy eclipse, and that if there was ever to be this sort of like significant spiritual moment occurring in front of us, our only, or like the modern response would just be like, just quick film it, live stream it, get it on photo, quick Jesus is back, take a photo, way. And I just find that absolutely hilarious. And so I'm playing on it in this. And what I tried to do along the painting was, I really like this idea that kind of, we're constantly surrounded by all these symbols of life and death, but we don't notice them until something absolutely like revelationary happens, or some sort of godlike nuclear blast occurs in the sky, and we go, whoa, look at that, quick, take a photo. Whereas if you were to just look around, you've got this kind of central totemic dead tree. We have a kind of church, which you'll see later becomes like some sort of Icelandic skeleton church that I was thinking when I was doing it, and it's also shaped like a coffin. We have gravestones signifying death. We have the cypress trees on the left hand of the piece signifying kind of funerals and stuff. But I get my glasses on here because it was right bright. It was really starting to glow. Hey. We're in this idea that like all these symbols are already around us if we were to just look, but you know, we're so modern, people are so glued into the technological aspect of life that we only look at these wider things if they have some sort of monetizable, filmable, producible aspect to them that we can turn into like, I don't know, that's mine. Everyone's a producer now, aren't they? Everyone's a bloody filmmaker, producer, creator. Everyone's looking for like the thing to point the camera at that's going to make them the big thing, the big streamer, the big whatever. And I think if you caught Jesus returning or airdropping down, and you got that on camera, man, like, whoa, you biggest YouTuber in the world, man. I caught it on film. The revelation. So let's see what I'm doing here. I'm just going over, I'm adding just lights on tops of the hedges. It's really just methodical at the minute where I'm kind of, right, I'll work on the hedge. Okay, so I need dark blue, dark green tones for the shadows. Almost dark browns in some places, and then I'll mix up some light tones, so light greens, almost kind of white yellows because of the sunshine. And basically just going in and sculpting the shape with light and dark, and trying to be quite sort of random, follow the shape of the hedge and the perspective and also the direction of the light. Once I've done the hedge, it's just a case of going through basically everything again and again and again. Do you hear me, dog? I don't know if your camera picked that up. There's a cat that lives 5 doors down. It comes and sits in our yard because no one lived in the house we were in for a few months. So the cat found out that it could sit in our yard, hide behind the wall, the little fence, and jump over the birds when they go to feed from next door's bird feeder. And it just winds there all up, man. Like, it just sits on the wall, like, I'm in your yard, man. Yeah. And then I was like, ruh, ruh, ruh. But he gets proper PTSD with chasing cats, and he'll just always bark. Every time you open the back door, he runs out. I'm like, there's no one here, chill. So you saw there, I'm sort of going in with just higher highlights. Now, it's all about matching the energy that's coming out of that central light source. Back at Dean Clough. Lovely little drive down. Nice day. Bloody sunny. I used to work around the corner on the other side of that building. But yeah, back in, because one of these little rooms up here, somewhere, there's a little gallery, and I've just dropped 4 of my pieces off. So we are looking forward to getting them. I think the exhibition starts May the 2nd, so I'll be down again for a little drinks and nibbles type thing. We are back in the clough, back in the clough. Say hello, Laura. Yeah, I was invited to show some of my pieces at a gallery, which was really cool. A gallery owner called Ruth Ann got in contact with me and asked if I'd like to apply and bring some pieces down to the North Approach Gallery in Halifax, which is situated in Dean Clough. And it's a small world because I used to live in Halifax and I worked just around the corner. So it was kind of nice to drive back down to Halifax, see some folk down there. One of my mates down there's just had a baby. It's nice to see the little wee Miles. And yeah, dropping pieces off at the gallery and really nice reception, really nice little place. Very sort of community led art and nice little thing Ruth's got going on, so I'm excited to be part of that. I believe I am back down on May the 2nd or May the 4th, whichever one's a Saturday. I think it's May the 2nd. I'm going to do this like, meet the artists, drink and nibbles type thing. Get my Yorkshire accent back on. When I lived down there, I took the accent on really strong, and then come back up north and had to go back Geordie again, like. But fries people's heads. Where are you from? Kind of pan-northern accent. Can't remember the worst phrase. There was one phrase that I used, I just went full Yorkshire with it. Trust me, trust me. Fucking Laura hates it. Trust us, it's trust us. Trust me, trust me, mate. Trust me, trust me like. So you had a nice little opportunity to get back on Halifax, show the paintings. They're in there for 3 months. They're all landscapes that I've done. They're all purchasable. If you go on my Instagram, you can see all sorts of posts about it, blah blah blah. Get in touch with North Approach. Go visit if you're in the area, it's a nice place. Dean Clough's cool as well, it's like all cafes, bars, art galleries. There's like the actual Dean Clough you can go into, and they've got like a Lego exhibition. And it's a nice little kind of half day out down there. Go get a pop and a beer and visit some little kind of art galleries. Anything from kind of little, North Approach that I'm in, all the way up to like there's a full fine art mad ass gallery where they do, crazy stuff and that. But it's well worth a visit. Let's talk about this painting again. What am I doing here? Alright, I'm adding just basically chunky stuff. So I started painting with this idea that like, if your base coat's very flat, then all the kind of, the light and the dark needs to have this texture in it, and especially the light side of the paint. Because if it has a texture in it, then it's going to catch natural light within the room. And that's being shined at it, however, which kind of like exacerbates the idea that you have this bright shining thing within the painting. And then by like almost kind of matting out the darks, I get this very vibrant result where the light is not only giving off the illusion of light in the fact that I've used kind of like a bright white source or whatever, but it becomes part of the light within the room when you look at it in, obviously not through phone screen, computer screen, when you see it in in real light, and it boosts the kind of effect of what I was trying to go for. I'm not the greatest at it. I think I could possibly be a little bit more directional with things, but it was a fun avenue to go down with this. And I've done kind of impasto things in the past. Impasto in the pasto. Eat some pasta with impasto in the past. But I never really considered it as a kind of like, how do you split out the process and utilise all thin paint as well as thick paint? Because if everything's heavily textured, it can become quite visually exhausting. I've done it in the past and to varying success. Whereas I think I had a lot of a better success with this piece. So again, I'm just building highlights, and what I do is go in and just do like lots and lots of little dots almost, and then it just looks like little dots, and then so I kind of go in and connect up the dots with just thick paint and smear it on a little bit, and just kind of build things into little sections rather than patchworks. I feel like it works quite effectively. And then you can use you can join more up in the close-up perspectives, and you can keep them a little bit more speckled and disparate in the further perspective, and I find that really helps to push the idea of scale and distance. Right, now this is about where I start just kind of jumping off the deep end with the colour choices. So I think at this point I've kind of established everything that I want to establish. I've added a few extra highlights on and deepened a few shadows, and now it's just a case of, right, where is the light? Where is the light hitting? Is the light cool? Is the light warm? Where are the shadows falling? Having this kind of like wraparound effect on the tree. I wanted, and you see the guy's deep shadow there, which is all just being established by this. And this is just basically layering wet on wet, using kind of thicker paint to create very opaque, light catching highlights. So I just start going in with it and just really just having loose brush, scraping the paint on, kind of letting it just flow, leaving texture, and really just thinking directionally. You know, everything now has to be painted in regards to the light source, which means that if I've painted, say I've painted a field just like a flat green, I can now go over the top and go, right, where's the light hitting this with extreme yellows, and kind of put in extreme contrasts and darknesses. And the more I push it, the more kind of visually appealing the entire piece becomes. And I feel like it really takes on its own artistic message when I start pushing into what you'll see later, which is a very, very, very blue and yellow piece. It all became about the yellow bright sky and the blue dark shadows. I hadn't intended for that to happen. I was intending to put a lot of kind of magentas in and things like that on the sky, and then when I put that kind of speckled yellow in on the sky, I sort of liked it, and then I sort of didn't like it, and it made me change slightly what I wanted to achieve. And this here is the sort of catalyst of, right, we're pushing into a new colour space or tonal space on the piece. And I was just basically, I'd established all the darks and the shadows by using sort of chromatic mixes of the kind of dark browns and the dark blacks and building up the shadow. And then what I start doing is just going in with a pure cobalt blue and just building in the colour of the shadow, but it still looks quite diffused, so it's almost like a very kind of natural depth, even though it's, you know, it's blue, but it contrasts against the yellow, so it becomes very visually appealing. But once I started pushing this amount of kind of colour into the shadow, I was like, right, I need to change the sky, because this it just wasn't reading correctly. The sky was too colourful and the ground had become too kind of forced into the blue. So as you can see here, this is where I'm starting to just really fill out the sky. I didn't know if I wanted to have speckles of the magenta and blue coming through. I didn't know whether I wanted to cover it completely. I didn't know whether I wanted to kind of scrape the paint back to have it showing through. In the end, I started just very kind of scraping the paint thin, so you do get these very, very slight changes in colour. The yellow's a lot warmer at the centre, where it's being influenced by the cadmium yellow behind, and then as I pull out it gets a bit whiter, and it kind of has the magenta and the blue pulling through slightly, just giving it a little bit of a shift, or especially when you see it in kind of, you know, with your own eyes and like in your light, it has a very slight shift. But it really, really changes the dynamic of the painting. It really changes the tone of it, like I was saying. And you see here, I'm just sort of block, 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 very quickly, you know, just very directionally building off. But you'll see, as soon as I get all of the colour covered, because that magenta, the pinky colour in the sky, is covered by the yellow, the painting also almost becomes two-tone. It becomes just a yellow brightness and a blue shade, and then the green on the hedges and the trees almost becomes tertiary, or just like a spot colour. Right, got an email there, little message. This boy was going to turn up. Hey, this is Harry. He's a photographer and friend, and he was like, oh, I'll get some nice shots done of your work and get some prints sorted. And so I spent yesterday doing this with about 40-50 pieces of work and photographed, and then while I am doing this voiceover and edit, Harry is downstairs currently going through all of the paintings and photos and cropping them down and making sure get some nice accurate colours going on. But it's really cool. He's got a mad printer, so at the end of the summer he's going to get me a nice big stack of prints done. But I've been waiting a while to get a good selection or a good set of digital files of my work, because I find it quite difficult to get good photographs, or especially get good colour grading on it. I use just a phone, so for all my filming and whatnot, and the video can do a pretty good job. You'll see in the reveal I use this like ProRes business, which is nice and contrasted and but yeah, I can't get still photos that are very that pick up all of the colour changes and the contrast and everything. Now, right, so we're going back to this now, and as you can see, I've blocked that sky in yellow, and the piece just becomes completely different. It just starts reading different, everything becomes brighter. I start going back in with higher highlights and just really pushing everything. It started to become some just sort of like godlike nuclear holy blast, like some sort of Terminator, where she's just like forced through that chain link fence, like and I just thought it was like, it just jumped. It took about, the piece took about 3.5 weeks to paint this. It was quite a while, and I only had a couple of nights off in that time, and I think for about 2.5 weeks the piece was very kind of static and just fill in, and then the last 5 days of working, it just took on this entire new personality. Ooh, got my phone. But yeah, the piece took an entire new personality on, and I was so pleased with it.
It is time for the revelation of Airdropped Jesus. Are you ready? 3, 2, 1.